We're going to go ahead and get started because we want to respect everyone's time. We have a small, intimate group today. But welcome. I'm Laura Cuneo, the Director of Counseling, and we have obviously our awesome team. Where are they? Daniel Johnson, Ingrid Baum, Janet Savolas, Scott Borchard, Catherine Howard, she's also our school therapist, Kaylee Bryden, and Doretha Juarez. And of course, our president, Rob Webb, is here to join us today as well. He's going to be taking notes.
Father of a senior.
He's going to be taking notes just like you guys. So welcome. I hope you guys got some coffee and goodies. We're very fortunate today to have one of our college admission friends here, Corinne Schell from Marist College. So she's done this presentation for us a few years now, and we love inviting her back because she's so knowledgeable, and it's a complex topic. So we don't pretend to be experts about financial aid. So we want to bring in the experts and have everybody get some good questions answered and get some tips as you kind of move forward with this process. So I'm going to let her take it away from here. Corinne, and you have your clicker?
I do.
Okay.
I'm all set.
Awesome. All right.
Well, good morning. How are you all today? I am so appreciative that they called and asked me to do the presentation because it kind of gets me away from pajamas and hanging around the house and reading applications. They were kind enough not to give me applications to review today because they knew I was busy. So thank you for that. But again, my name is Corinne Schell. I'm Director of West Coast Admission at Marist College. Anybody here familiar with Marist? Yeah, we actually have a big connection with Chaminade schools. We're kind of affiliated with each other. And Marist actually, speaking of financial aid, offers scholarships for students that are graduates of Chaminade high schools. There's one actually right on Long Island, so that's not too far from where we are. I'm a Marist graduate, my husband, my son, my daughter, my sister, my nephew, my niece, so I'm a little passionate about Marist. But yeah, it's been great. I'm in my, 35th year working at Marist professionally, not including my undergraduate years. But what I want to do today is to kind of give you an overview of the financial aid, the process. How many here are freshman parents? Great. Sophomores, juniors, and a senior parent or two? Okay. Have you done the financial aid form already? Good. Because if you have not, I always recommend make sure that you have the form completed and submitted by Thanksgiving. Even if your students have not made their final determinations as far as where they're going to be submitting their applications to, get it done. It's very easy to add a school or two as the time goes on, but you do not want to miss out on any free money. And two expressions, the early bird gets the worm and the well runs dry, and that is a fact for all of our colleges and universities. So love this slide. For you who were here last year, I'm sure that you remember this one, but it's very true. When they're going off to kindergarten, they don't want to leave their mom. And then when they're going off to college, the mom doesn't want them to leave them. So the roles kind of reverse a little bit there. And I do see it. I'm at a college fair, and I've got my Marist banner, which states New York and Italy. And a mom walks by. Sorry, it's usually the moms. Too far. And I'm like, for who? You were the student, and it's usually for the parent. They do not want to let their kids go. But you know what? You need to. So remember, two things you're going to hear over the course of the next year or two or three or four is fit and depends. And it's a fit socially, academically for the student, and it's a financial fit for the parent. And that's a discussion that you definitely want to have with your students because there's a lot of our schools out there that do not meet a student's need 100%. And I'll explain that to you as we progress in the presentation. And then the other word is depends. Please do not assume that what an answer from one school is going to be the same as an answer from another school. We are all completely different. Just in Poughkeepsie and our surrounding area, we have Vassar College, which is about 8 miles across town from us. We have the Culinary Institute of America, 1 mile up the road from us. We have West Point, which is about 45 minutes south across the river. We're all places of higher education, but we're all completely different. So what my answer is going to be for you for Marist is going to be completely different than the Culinary, Vassar, or even West Point. So what I want to do today for you is to kind of give you an overview of what is financial aid, how do colleges and universities come up with what we call as cost of attendance, and you're going to hear a lot of acronyms which this is known as the COA. What are the different types of financial aid that are offered? What is the expected family contribution? How is that determined? That is known as the EFC. Also, the free application for federal student aid, which is known as the FAFSA, hence the word free. And then the last piece is the CSS profile, which is an additional form that some of our colleges and universities may require you to complete in order for your student to apply for financial aid. So what is financial aid? It's very simple, 3 categories. Free money, we all want free money. There's also work, loan, and that's what they call self-help. And then, those two I kind of combine together because they are considered self-help. 2 things you're going to realize: that you're never going to get away with not having a student loan put into your student's financial aid package. I'm a firm believer that even if you do not want your student to have the burden of debt, I say have them at least take out 1 year of their student loan, because it's going to do 2 things. It's going to create buy-in, because now they're invested into their education, and it's also going to help provide them with credit history upon graduation or when they leave school. If they're going to make X number of payments consecutively on time, then pay it off. There is no penalty for a student paying off their loan quickly. But at the same time, they've now established credit. What is the cost of attendance? Very simple. It's tuition and fees, which are the billable cost, room and board, billable, and then the non-billable, which are books, personal travel. I know that for me at Marist, we're New York or Italy. I reach out to financial aid and I tell them, hey, look, my students from the West Coast, they're going to have to fly a couple of times back and forth to campus. Please include that into the cost of attendance, which will rise the cost of attendance so that we can provide them with the most financial aid possible. So family contribution, you're going to complete that FAFSA, which some of you have already done. And then you're going to send that off to the federal government, and then they're going to do their calculation and figure out what they feel you can reasonably afford to pay, which when you see it, you'll probably be like, how did they come up with that? However, that's going to be the same at all of our schools, where the cost of attendance will be different at all of our schools.
Sorry. On the FAFSA, I just happened to fill it out, and I saw the part that it says what they would offer you, the whatever it might be. Where's the part where they say that they let you know what it is you're able to pay?
It should be in there where it's the EFC, the expected family contribution.
Okay.
So if it says, say, $35,000 in the EFC,
Okay.
that's what the government feels that you can afford to pay.
Okay.
So that's different than our cost of attendance. So if we have a school that's, say, $60,000 to go to, and the government, you fill out the form and the government says, oh, you can afford 20, you should be entitled to $40,000 worth of financial aid. But does that mean you're going to get it? No, because the majority of our colleges and universities do not meet your need 100%. So that's where that financial fit is. You have to be prepared that when you do get that financial aid and you're like, wait a second, we were only supposed to contribute $20,000. We have unmet need of $40,000. They only gave us $30,000. Where are we coming up with that additional $10,000? That's where you got to figure out, what are we going to do? Some schools will meet your need 100%. So basically, those schools are going to be the ones that are going to require that additional form, that CSS profile, which I'll get into more as we continue on. So again, this is going to stay the same no matter what school you're looking at. So if you're looking at a school that's $20,000 and your EFC was 20, you really are not entitled to anything, but you'll be eligible for the loan. If they are eligible for scholarship, that'll be part of it. Does that mean that they can't work on campus? No. If they can find a job on campus, it just will not be work study. And again, as I progress, you'll learn a little bit more about that as well. The school that is $40,000, EFC is 20. You should be entitled to 20. Probably you'll get that in the form of loan, work, and grant. And then if a student is eligible for scholarship, that'll be in there as well. And then again, that school that's $60,000, your EFC is 20, you should be eligible for $40,000. Again, they're going to put work opportunity, loan in there, as well as the free money. and/or scholarship. So 5 things that they're gonna, the big factors, of course, is your income. They're gonna be also looking at your assets. Your home is not considered an asset on the FAFSA. However, if you have rental properties, if you have a second home, that is considered an asset. So just, be careful of that you're not including that. It does not include your retirements. If the only retirement piece that it would be an IRA educational fund, which is very similar to the 529 plan, but your retirement is not looked at in regards to this. The number in your house. So if it's mom, dad, and say 3 kids, that's 5 in the household. Say you have 2 in college, then of course that's 2. But it's not your 26, 27-year-old that's living home, working, and taking a class, 1 or 2 classes. They will not take that into account. It's the traditional aged college students from 17, 18, 19, 20, up to usually 22, 23. And then the age of the older parent. Believe it or not, this is a big help to be older when you're filling out the form, because the government feels that you should be putting money aside towards retirement, not necessarily towards the college education, or as much towards the college education. On the right-hand side are the examples of different types of assets. Questions?
So how do they work it with the number of twins, triplets, quadruplets nowadays when all the kids are going off at the same time?
Well, it depends. There's that word, depends. If they're all looking at the same place, so what we do is when we're reviewing the application and we find out, oh, they're a twin or they're a triplet, we look to see if the others are applying to us as well, and then we have a triplet twins room where we kind of keep them together and we review them at the same time. But it's going to depend. You'll have to check with each of the schools to see how they handle twins or triplets. What is financial need? Kind of explain this. Pretty simple. Cost of attendance, tuition fees, room, board, books, personal travel, minus that expected family contribution that the federal government comes up with. Subtract that, comes up with your, what they call as the financial need. Now, completing the FAFSA. Before you can begin to complete the FAFSA, you have to apply for what they call as a FSA ID, which will then become your electronic signature. So basically, if you go to fsaid.gov, you'll be able to fill out the form. It's very simple. You will need to do it. Your student will need to do it. Basically, that will be your identification for the remainder of the times that you're filling out the FAFSA. If you have twins, you've got triplets, if you have 2 or 3 in college at the same time, your FSA ID remains consistent. It's theirs that will be different. Please be careful when you're completing that form, because we know who's filling it out. Even though the government would like the student and the parent to do it together. When you're filling it out and they ask for the student's social security number, do not put yours, because it's not going to match and you're going to have issues. And you don't want issues, especially if you're looking for free money. And the other, believe it or not, the date of birth. They're asking for the student's date of birth, not yours. So again, will not kind of match up, and then you're going to have to try to rectify that, and then that will take a little bit of time. So please be careful when you're completing the form. Once you get your FSA ID number, which when you apply for it, it will be a day or 2 before you get it. So don't think you can just sit in front of the computer and go, okay, I'm going to do this, then I'll start. You can't. You have to wait till you get that in order to begin. For filling out that form, in the past, we used to just use prior year. So for the senior parents here, basically what we would do is we would be looking at 2019 tax information. But on January 1st, who's got their taxes done? Nobody. So a majority of the families would have to estimate. So the government felt, no, let's go back 2 years, called prior, which for our senior parents in here, it'll be 2018 taxes that you're going to be using. Probably a good 90% of our families know that they've got them done, so their information is going to be accurate. That way, you know what you're going to get is what you're going to get from the schools. However, if you own your own business and life was great in 2018, but it hasn't been so kind in 19, bless you. You don't want the colleges to be using 2018 tax information because it's not reflective of what it is today. So you would have to notify each of the schools individually and let them know that, you know, the situation and kind of put it in writing, why you want them, number one, to use the 2019 income information and provide them with what you've earned to date, and they'll utilize that. But you're gonna have to do it for each of the schools that they're applying to. You cannot send it to the government, they will not take it, they'll shred it, they won't even look at it, they look at everything black and white. So they're looking at your actual income information from your 2018 return.
Can you do that after the child has been accepted?
Oh, sure, yeah.
So you don't have to just do it to all 20 schools, you could do it to like the ones they've been accepted to and they're considering.
Sure. I mean, you can also photocopy and just change the schools. I think I personally would be sending it to the schools because I would want them to know beforehand, just so that they've got all of their information. Not that admissions is going to have anything to do with it. That's just based upon financial aid. But if you want to wait till they've been accepted, that's fine as well. So I kind of explained the FSA ID needed in order to complete the FAFSA. It is the electronic signature. Who completes the FAFSA? All U.S. citizens and eligible non-U.S. citizens. I put this blurb in here because I think it's important. For single-parent households, the FAFSA only requires the custodial parent to complete the FAFSA. The non-custodial parent, the only information that they're looking for is the amount of child support that's been paid.
What if it's 50/50? I mean, you just said. Okay.
Then they're gonna go, well, if it's 50/50, whoever provides the most resources. And this is where I step away from the camera, so that I'm not on record. So hopefully you can kind of figure that out. But the government, they want the child support that's been paid by the non-custodial parent. And again, if it's 50/50, then who provides the most resources? Where the profile, and that's the other form that's going to be required at some schools, they want to know all of the income information from the non-custodial parent. If they've remarried, they want their information. They're going to want your home value. So it's completely different from FAFSA to the profile. Documents needed, again, federal tax returns. The government has a link to the IRS, known as the IRS data retrieval tool. When you're completing the online form, you just have to click on, and what will happen is it will kind of bring you right into the IRS, and they'll populate the fields on your FAFSA directly from your tax return. And again, I think that this is a great tool because there's less errors. I've had families, one time I had a family with $250,000 income, and they wrote down that they paid taxes, excuse me, of $250,000. So their EFC, excuse me, was 0. But they were eligible for everything. Then we collect the tax returns and find out this isn't accurate, and then we have to start taking back money. And even though it was a mistake on their part, it's very difficult to have that conversation and to take money away from somebody that you've just given it to. So this is what's so fabulous about this tool, is that you're going to have accurate information. Social Security number, I highly suggest that you provide it for the student, even though you may feel, I don't want them to have my daughter or my son's Social Security number. 35 years, I've never heard of a problem with any of our students having any information taken from them because they provided it. If you want financial aid, you're going to have to provide it anyway, so just put it out there up front. Again, that child support, that's considered untaxed income. If there's workman's compensation, anything that's untaxed is considered in that as well. Your bank statements, again, the assets, savings, checking. Your home, again, is not utilized, but if you have the retirement, kind of home set out there, as well as any type of properties, then that would be considered. The IRS data retrieval tool, kind of spoke about that. On the bottom is the like the website that you can kind of get additional information for that, which will be very, very helpful to you. Again, I can't stress enough, take advantage of it. If you're gonna fill out the paper, which I don't know if anybody does that anymore, unfortunately you cannot use the IRS data retrieval tool on that. This is how the FAFSA works, pretty simple. You and the student complete it. It's gonna go into two different directions. One's gonna go over to the student, and that's where they're going to review it and make sure that everything is correct and accurate on it. So say you had originally listed 3 in college, and then one of them decides, oh, I'm not gonna go back. That's where you can make the change there. On our side, the college university side, we're gonna get that information. We're not doing anything with it until the student has been accepted. So again, even though we are looking at, I tell families by Thanksgiving, make sure that form is sent out. Even if they haven't made their final choices of where they're gonna be looking at, get it out. You wanna make sure that it's out there, and then as they add schools, you can also add schools. And it's very simple to make changes on it, and then the student and the parent just kind of hits the submit button and send it back. So say a student is looking at 16 schools, yet they only allow to list 10. Well, now you got 6 that are kind of floating out there because you can't put it on. Yes, you can. Once you get that information back from the federal government, take those 10 schools off, put the other 6 schools, hit submit, and then the other 6 schools will get it. Because the first 10 have already received that information. So after we find out that the student's been accepted, then we will put together the student's financial aid package.
How quickly do they get that information? I'm just curious.
A couple of days, if
Okay,
that.
because I heard back from one college that got it, but I didn't hear from the other, so I wasn't sure how soon
You
I
heard
can
back
remove
from a
them.
school? What did they tell you?
They just said, thank you, we received your FAFSA information, here's other places, there's where you can look for money, go on the site.
Okay.
But they were the only ones, so I was just curious, but all of them get that pretty immediately?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
And again, that word depends. So maybe she's looking at, or he's looking at 6 schools and you get it from the one. You may never hear from the other 5 until financial aid packages are sent out.
Okay, but they do have it, so you can go
Yes.
change it, okay?
Yeah.
I fill out the FAFSA and I received the ID number too.
Mhm.
I'm so confused. She's applying to 15 schools, colleges. And what about all these grants, Cal Grant, Pell Grant, BOG scholarships?
Yeah,
Do
that's,
you apply separately for each school or
no.
or different application to website?
No, just my suggestion would be in that situation, you're completing the FAFSA. I would make sure that of the 15 schools that your student's looking at, find out which ones require the CSS profile. Because it is 2 different forms. Again, some of us do not, we do not, but other schools, especially the ones that will meet your need 100%, they're gonna be looking for the CSS profile. So you wanna check on that. The other thing is, in her situation or his situation, is it your daughter? You can only list 10 schools, so she may not have even applied to 5 schools for financial aid. So you wanna pull off those first 10 and then list the other 5 so that the other 5 schools will receive that information.
Oh, I thought once you apply 10 schools and after you got ID number, you can apply additional 5.
You can, but you have to take off those first 10 to add those other 5.
Okay.
You just go in and erase.
Yeah,
it.
so
You just take them off.
verification, the federal
It's
government,
okay, because they've already
Remind
gone.
us what the CSS profile is.
I'll get to that
Oh, you-
towards the end, yeah.
I don't remember.
Yeah, so I'll do it now, actually. So CSS profile is a separate form. It's through College Scholarship Services. And schools primarily that will meet a student's need 100% are going to require that form to be filled out. You can actually Google schools that require CSS profiles, and if your student schools are listed there, you need to complete that as well. They're looking at additional information, and as I said in that divorce-separated single-parent household information, FAFSA only requires the custodial parent's income information. The non-custodial, there's nothing except that child support. And again, the CSS profile, they want to know everything about that non-custodial parent. So the federal government, which is the FAFSA, that free form, that's where you're going to get that expected family contribution. So, we'll go back to that 20,000 EFC from FAFSA. Now, the profile, when you're filling that out, and you, all of a sudden you look and you're like, oh my gosh, it's 35,000, 40,000, FAFSA's still 20. So the federal government, your Cal Grants, your state, that's never gonna change from the 20,000 EFC, but with the profile, the institutional funds are gonna change. So a school that meets your need 100%, if the school cost is 60, the EFC is 20, you should be getting the 40. That's based on FAFSA's EFC, but with the profile, if it's up at say 40, now how much aid are you eligible for? $20,000. And they're gonna meet that need 100%, but the goal is to give you as less as possible because it's the institutional money. That's basically the difference between the profile and the FAFSA. Again, they're gonna ask for a lot of additional information, home value, they wanna know everything about your home. Will they use the entire amount? No, absolutely not, but no, the FAFSA doesn't even ask for it, so there's nothing there. So that's the difference between the CSS profile and the FAFSA. So they want even more information. There is a cost for the filling out the profile. It's $25 for the first school, it's $16 for each additional school that requires it. So again, for your daughter, looking at the 15 schools, I'm sure maybe 1 or 2 will require the profile. So you want to make sure that you get that out as well. October 1st is the first time that you can begin the forms. So even if you go on September 15th, and you think you're filling out the next year's FAFSA, you're not. You will be brought up a form, but it's going to be last year's form, so you have to be careful with that as well. I've had families that have done that thinking that they're getting a jump start, but they're not, because they're filling out the prior year, not the year that they actually do want that information sent. So verification, the federal government selects a population. I don't know how they figure it out, but they do. I know for Marist, we actually verify 100% of our enrolled freshmen. After that, basically, the only students that will verify are the students that are chosen by the federal government. And what do we mean by verification? We may want to see a copy of the tax returns. We may verify or send a sibling enrollment, verification of sibling enrollment at another school if we're kind of questioning, is it a legitimate? So we'll send that. So those are the kind of things that we do in verification. A couple of things too while I'm thinking about it. Scholarship. I know that for us at Marist, all students that are accepted are considered for scholarship. If they're eligible, it's part of their acceptance letter. Financial aid is completely separate. However, there are schools that require students to complete a form to apply for a scholarship, and there are deadlines. So you want to make sure that each of the schools that you're looking at, see if there is a deadline or that they have to fill out another form to apply for a scholarship. So that's one of the questions. How many here have been visiting campuses? Excellent. How many have done tours? And great. How many here sat through or met with financial aid when you went to visit the campus? Most people don't. Well, that's great.
USC.
Yeah, you're one of the very few that do that. And that's my suggestion, please, when you start visiting the campuses, or if you're currently doing it, make an appointment, sit with them for 10, 15 minutes. Want a benefit? You're gonna grab their business card. Now you have a contact at that particular school. And then have your student have a list of questions that they're gonna ask that person, such as, do you require a separate form for the scholarship? Will you meet my financial need 100%? Because again, as I mentioned, a lot of our schools do not. So that, again, that prepares you for figuring out how to finance the remaining of the balance. And as I go on, I'll come up with a couple more questions for you. So, types of financial aid, of course, that free money. Make sure you get that form on time. As I said several times, get it out by Thanksgiving. Submit, even if the students haven't finalized their list. So we offer scholarships, academic and merit, grants, which are need-based, so you would have to file the financial aid form, federal grants, which are called Pell and SCOG, and we'll talk a little bit more about those. And then the other portion is self-help, which is in the form of the student loan and the work opportunity. I do hear from families whose kids have eligibility to work. I don't want my student working, I want them to focus on their school. I don't agree. I think it's a benefit for them to work because it's gonna do a couple of things. They're gonna get money, make money. They're gonna meet other students. They can work in all different types of areas on campus, everywhere from the athletic department, admissions, the library. There's plenty of jobs on campus. So again, I think it's good, and it also teaches them time management because they do really figure out, all right, I have to work Monday, Thursday, and Friday for 3 hours on each day. I have a club meeting, I have this, I have that. So they learn how to proportion their time. Students that don't work, aren't involved, they tend to procrastinate. Next thing you know, they have a 12-page paper due tomorrow. So we all know how that goes. Scholarships, now these are Marist-based. And again, you need to do the research and see what all of the different schools and universities that your kids are applying to, what they will offer. So we offer academic scholarship, and as I had mentioned before, we do not require any additional forms. If they're eligible, it's part of their accept. We are Division I, so we do offer athletic scholarships. We do have choral, instrumental, we have, which are considered music. We have theater, we have debate, we are close to West Point, so we do have Army ROTC. The next portion is the endowed scholarships. Check out the websites, go to the financial aid pages on those websites, look to see what they offer for endowed. Those are specifically, for example, at Marist, the Chaminade is an endowed scholarship. So go to the website, see if your student falls into any of the categories. Most of the time they're very, very specific. So you're looking for a student who's a business major, looking to concentrate in finance, has to have a good, strong GPA, show financial need. Sometimes it's graduate from a particular high school, from a particular state. And if we can't find students, we kind of open it up until we're able to give it to a student that needs it. So check out those. And then the other one is the outside scholarships. Check with your HR department, see if they offer anything for your students. Do you have a list of scholarships that students can apply to? Okay. And they're notified of those?
Yes, yeah, well, counseling office sends out emails with opportunities, but we also post everything on Blackboard, so on your student's Blackboard connection page. And through Naviance, there's a search for scholarships.
Okay, and do parents have access to any of that?
Yes.
Okay, all right, so at least then your students can't hide that from you. And sometimes they do, because it's just like, oh, I've got to do another form, I've got to do another essay. But you know what, sometimes they're very, very worth it. I mean, any of them are worth it. Whether it's $500, $1,000, some are really good. So say your student applies to Johnson & Johnson for $10,000 scholarship and they get it. That's going to be sent more than likely electronically to the school. When the student arrives, they sign it, the college verifies it, it gets put onto their account. So the schools that don't meet your need 100%, then that's going to kind of slide right in there and fill that gap that may be there. However, if a student does receive an award and they're packaged 100%, then unfortunately we have to start taking away, I have to figure out another term instead of taking away or taking back. But we have to start removing financial aid, which of course would be in the form of the work and the loan, because those are self-help. And then that scholarship would be considered free money, so that usually is okay. But those are the endowed, the outside resources that students can apply for. And then here, and again, this is where they can kind of fill in, complete that gap. Sometimes the checks will be sent to the student at home. Usually those are the smaller ones. And the student is supposed to notify the school, submit it to the school, hence the word supposed to. Athletic scholarships, I just kind of put this up here because the only role that admissions plays in this is the coaches will come to us with a student's transcript, we review it, and we try to figure out, number one, are they admissible to the school? And two, if they would be eligible for scholarship, because a majority of these athletic scholarships are not fully funded. I know for Marist, our men's and women's basketball teams are the only fully funded sport. Each team is given X number of dollars, and they have to figure out how to best utilize those resources to create the best team possible. So if your student is an athlete, they may get $2,000 for a year. They may get 25, they may get 30. They could be fully funded, but you have to do the research and reach out to the coaches at the schools your kids are looking at. And then there's the D1, the D2, the D3. D1, D2 offer money, D3 does not. And then gift aid, the federal government. This is determined from you completing that FAFSA. So the first one we have is Pell, and that's for economically disadvantaged students. The minimum for this past year was $650, the max is $61.95. But again, if you're looking at a school that's $70,000, that's not a lot of money, but it's free money. And that will be determined based upon your expected family contribution, what amount you would be eligible for. If every student in my school were eligible for Pell, they would all get Pell. SEOG is the Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, and that is also for students that are economically disadvantaged. They have to be Pell Grant recipients in order to be eligible for this. So now that you know about it, and your student gets their aid packages, and you see that they have Pell, and there's no SEOG, what do? You call the contact that you met at that school, because you grabbed their business card when you met with them and asked them, hey, I noticed that my student has Pell eligibility, but there's no SEOG. Can I get some? And either the answer will be, let's see what we can do, or unfortunately, we've utilized all of the resources, because each school is only given a pool of money. Where Pell, if they're all eligible, they all get it. SEOG is not. It's limited resources. And then that could be anywhere from $100 a year up to $4,000 for the year. And most of these, Pell, I think, is up 5 years, 6 years that they can get it after it's done. But your state grant, those are all, there's limits to it, so you have to be careful. Another question that your student wants to ask when you visit the school and the aid person is how many years or semesters or quarters or trimesters is my student eligible for scholarship? What is the GPA that's required to renew it? Do you offer a grace period, such as if they fall below the required GPA, are they still going to get it? We offer grace period 1 semester. If they bring it up after that, then it gets reinstated, but we still give it to them that semester. If they aren't able to bring it up to the required, then unfortunately the semester after, they would lose it. So you need to find out what it is from those particular schools, what their policies are for the scholarship. And then, of course, the need base. You do have to do the FAFSA for that. Cal Grants, every one of our states wants to keep our students in states. California is no exception. So they have the Cal Grants A, the B, and the C. And this is, you have to do the FAFSA. And then, depending on what your need is, and then the school will send the Cal Grant verified GPA to the state, so you do not have to do anything. If the student's eligible, you will be notified. And then there's the 3 different types. On the bottom, I did give a link to calgrants.org for additional. This is just kind of a summary of the Cal Grant. But again, FAFSA has to be completed, and the verified GPA will be sent to the state. So the A is for tuition and other fees. And then I did list the amounts, up to the amounts of grant that could be provided to the students based upon which schools that they do go to. So it's up to a little over $5,700 at the Cal State schools, a little over $12,500 at the UC schools, and then the private schools in California, a little over $9,000. But again, that's up to if you're eligible.
Is this for each year or over the duration of them in college?
Each year.
Each year.
Yeah. And then the Cal Grant B is for lower income students, so they give them additional resources which would help a little bit more with kind of their room and board and their books. But they also, it's the same thing, they have to have that GPA, they have to be eligible for it, but there is a cutoff in regards to the number of semesters, years, trimesters, or quarters that they're eligible for. And then the C is for students that are interested in some type of certification or vocational education. So they would receive a little over $1,000 for books and equipment and a little over $2,400 for tuition and fees. And this is if they're eligible. Cal Grants, okay, we did that. Middle class scholarship, kind of on the same basis. They try to help through the state for students that are going to the UCs and the CSU schools. There are cutoffs as far as, you need less than $171,000 income and assets, which can be filled up pretty quickly, especially when you're looking at assets. But again, it's only offered to students for CSU and the UCs. So they must meet the following requirements. They, again, have to be a resident of California, attending a UC or a CSU school, be a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident, meet certain income and asset and other financial aid standards, no more than income and assets no more than $171,000, be in good satisfactory academic progress, not be in default on a loan, and must not have been incarcerated. That's the key. So again, students and families who have income and assets of up to $171,000 may be eligible for the scholarship for no less than 10% of the state mandated tuition and fees, or no more than 40% of the mandatory system-wide tuition and fees at UCs or CSUs. So if you're eligible, you will receive no less than 10%, but no more than 40%. However, there's always a however. It will all depend on the state, the funding allocated by the state, and the number of students that are eligible for this fund. So that kind of leaves it open for how much you would be receiving, or how many students would be eligible. Student employment, kind of spoke about that. One thing, when you get your financial aid packages, and you're going to see the grants, the scholarships, the loan, the work opportunities, please know that work does not come off your student's bill. So if your student has an allocation of $5,000, and we go by semesters, so on your aid package it would show $2,500 for the fall, $2,500 for the spring. That does not come off of your bill. And I've seen that happen before, where families are like, okay, yeah, take off the $2,500. No, you cannot take it off. It's an allocation that they can earn over the course of the year. If they do not work, that doesn't miraculously become a grant. It doesn't become a loan. It's an allocation for them to earn. So please keep that in mind. It's nothing worse than bills being due in August and realizing at that point, like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that. Now I've got to come up with an extra $2,500 because I took it off the bill. So please don't do that.
Excuse me, is the student then paid, and as a result, that's how it gets paid back?
Well, the students are going to receive a paycheck.
Okay.
And again, depending on the school, if you want your student to be utilizing those resources towards their bill, we don't do that. It just becomes too complicated, and we want the students to have the money in their pocket. But some schools will allow a student's paycheck to be put directly towards their bill. So that's another question.
So the $2,500 goes to the student, it goes off their tuition?
No, it does not come off of their tuition at all. It's an allocation that they're eligible to earn over the course of the year.
So the parent pays the $2,500, but the student gets a check when he
Right,
works to
well,
reimburse.
The
student has to give
responsibility of
parent
working,
the
it's the
money.
same thing.
Here we have the Stafford loan, and this is two different kind of categories. You've got the subsidized and you have the unsubsidized. So basically, the subsidized, the government will pay the students interest while they are in school. If the student is eligible for unsubsidized, the student is responsible for the interest payments. So if your student falls in the unsub category, reach out to the school, find out how much the payment would be on a monthly basis for the interest. If you can swing it, pay it. If not, then that's not a big deal. They'll just push that off, but the pile is going to grow higher with the interest that the student's going to have to pay back. Excuse me. The interest rates are the same for sub or unsub. They've gone down a little bit over the course of this past year. Usually July 1st is when they'll make the interest for the next year. But again, if your student has eligibility for it, which it's going to be in your financial aid package no matter what, and you want to write a letter of reconsideration looking for additional free money, please do not have your student decline the loan or work, because that's what the office is going to do more than likely, is they're going to look and see if the student has accepted that self-help portion of their aid package. If they have not and you're looking for free money, don't expect getting any additional free money, because the student's not willing to do their portion of the self-help, then the school will make that decision if they're going to give you more money or not. So accept it, and even if they're not going to take out that loan, that's okay. By accepting it doesn't mean you're filling out the application, or the student is. It's just that if you're looking for free money, do not decline that, because they're going to look at that probably.
Sorry, how does that come to the student? They get an email saying you've been offered this loan?
Yeah, it's going to be part of their financial aid package.
From the school?
And the students have to accept or decline the financial aid.
Okay.
And students will do that. They'll be like, yeah, I want the free money. Sometimes they'll mark off no or leave it blank for the other two because they don't want it. But again, if you're writing a letter to look for additional free money, I wouldn't decline those, even if a student decides not to work and decides not to do a loan. That's probably the first thing that the aid office will look at.
So it comes from the colleges individually, the package?
For each school, the student will receive their financial aid package.
Okay.
And then these are the loan limits. So a freshman, which is 0 to 29 credits, can borrow $5,500, $6,500 for a sophomore, and $5,500 for both the juniors and the seniors. Again, when you're looking at the cost of college, this really is not a lot of money.
What do the credits mean?
What was that?
What do the credits mean?
Units.
Yeah, so a freshman is considered 0 to 29 credits. So again, we're semester-based, so our students, it's 15 credits per semester, which makes them, full-time. And it's 120 credits to graduate, so 4 years. However, second semester, the student, they do what they need to do, but after they're done with their freshman year, they have 27 credits. They cannot borrow at the next level until they're up to 30. And then the PLUS loan, parent loan for undergraduate studies. This is a loan, of course, for the parents. You do have to complete the FAFSA. There is a fixed interest rate right now of 7.079. Repayments do not begin until 60 days after the final disbursement for the year. So again, we're by semesters. Second semester, our students return around mid-January. 3 weeks later, financial aid is posted. After that, it's 0 refund if a student drops credits or withdraws. That's when the final disbursement will be sent for that year for the PLUS loan. 60 days from that disbursement. So sometime in probably April, you're going to begin making your payments on the PLUS loan. So for the PLUS loan, you can borrow cost of attendance minus all of your financial aid. So if we go back to that $60,000 a year, the school gives you 40, your EFC were 20, you can borrow 20. So it really is the unmet need and the family contribution that you can borrow.
Does interest start accruing from when you take your first disbursement, even though you don't have to pay back until later?
Yes.
Okay.
And then the private loan, not a fan of these. It's for the student. It's otherwise known as a supplemental loan. It's in the student's name. It is credit-based, but what 17-year-olds cannot take out a loan? And 18-year-olds, who has credit? Nobody. So let me get my big mirror and hold up who's going to help out the student with this. You are. You're going to become the co-signers, or the grandparents become co-signers. And then they can borrow the same way as that PLUS loan, where if it's $60,000, we give you 40, they can borrow the 20. And then they do not start making payments until they're done with school or fall below 6 credits. Yeah, so not a fan of it at all. Check with the school if this is something that you're interested in, because each one of our schools has different lenders that they prefer to use for these loans. And then the monthly payment plans, big fan of these. There is no credit check, there's no finance charges, there's no interest that accrues. It's a great plan that you can either extend payments over 10 months or 12 months. So for us, again, our students, you know, the deposit date is May 1. If you're doing the 10-month, you're going to start paying. You're going to start making your payments at that point. However, if you did not get into the program, yet the bill is due in August, and all of a sudden you're like, we can't do this, you most certainly can get into one of these plans at that time. You would just have to make the back payments to catch up to where you should be at that particular time. So I always think if you were thinking of a $20,000 plus loan, why not do a $10,000 plus loan and do the payment plan of $10,000, which would be $1,000 a month for 10 months. And again, there is no finance charge, there is no interest that you're going to be paying. It's a great plan, and again, I'm very, very positive about these.
And this is through the school?
You would check with the school to see who they utilize for their plan, but yeah, it would be through the school.
What's the name of that plan?
They're just alternative. What was that?
Is there a name for it?
There are names for it, but again, each school is going to use something different. So check with the schools that your students are looking at, and the only thing you need to say is, do you have a payment plan, a 10-month or a 12-month payment plan? And they'll know exactly what it is that you're talking about. And again, here's that CSS profile, the dreaded CSS profile. The FAFSA probably will be rather easy. Did you find it easy to complete?
Yeah.
How long do you think overall it took you?
Well, if you have everything at your fingertips and you use the retrieval tool, I think it was probably 45 minutes.
Did you have to do profile?
We did, yeah.
And how-
But the easier one was, once you do it for the first child, I just did it for child 2,
Yeah.
and did the update, and that was like
Yeah.
scary easy.
Yeah.
I worry about, I help run a school, so I'm worried about data and exposure and all of that, so it freaked me out a little bit the first time, because you're doing everything like your IRS, your tax returns, your social security numbers on your computer. I was like, okay, you know, so I was doing it at home,
Yeah.
but still that freaks me out, because
Yeah.
you're sending your entire life
Right.
into this cyberspace.
Right.
I'm weird though, so.
Right. No, but
Sorry.
no, but
In case you didn't know.
that's a legitimate concern. The
Yeah.
thing is that, and seriously, in 35 years, I don't know of anybody, and if it were, you would hear about it.
Right.
You know, excuse me.
It's very quick.
Yeah,
And the
very, very
retrieval
quick.
tool is amazing, because you're just migrating all the information that populates it.
Yeah. And what about profile? How long did that take?
It took a little bit longer, yeah, and it's a little bit more painful, because it's everything they want to know.
Everything.
You know,
Yeah.
how much you weigh,
Tall, yeah. So then here's some information. Again, this is very basic, but you do have to do the FAFSA. Even though your FAFSA EFC is going to be different than what the CSS profile is, the only reason why this is used is for institutional funds. So the colleges are collecting this additional information to figure out how they can best utilize their institutional funds in the financial aid packages. So the goal is basically to raise the EFC. But your EFC from FAFSA will never change for federal and state, and for institutional if a school only uses FAFSA, which is what we do. So again, you need to check to see which schools do require that from you. And then here again, some information. They're going to look at the home value. They're going to look at, FAFSA does not allow you to list amount of money paid for private school. They feel that there's plenty of good public schools out there, that this is a personal choice to send your kids to private, but the profile will allow you to list that. God bless them for that, right? And then again, that extenuating circumstances. You brought up a good point. 2 in college, coming up, you need to do this. The first one, your freshman going in, Their financial aid is gonna be based upon 2 in college. So with 2 in college, your EFC is literally cut in half. So that financial aid package should be pretty decent. Excuse me. The older student, I would check with their financial aid office, sit with them, call them, whatever, and ask, can you please help us, because now I've got more than 1 in college. Traditionally, whatever a student comes in with is what they're going to stay with throughout their 4 years. So if they were given a $20,000 scholarship, the likelihood of that increasing is pretty slim. It won't go down, but it'll probably stay the same. Yet your student has a 4.0, you know, life has been great, they're involved in everything, they're the class president. You need to write and ask, or just call and ask them, is there any opportunity to increase the scholarship? That's a good question for when you're sitting with them even before they go to a particular school. How many semesters or quarters or trimesters will they receive that for? So for that second student, you want to, again, reach out, ask for reconsideration, because likelihood they're not going to be like, oh, look, there's 2 that's been cut in half, let's give them more. You have to ask for that. And then for the second one, the freshman, you have to remember that when that older one gets out or graduates, that EFC is going to go right back up. And you have to be prepared that your aid package is going to reflect that. So you want to make sure that you are well aware that senior year for that freshman, that they're going to possibly lose some financial aid. Doom and gloom, I know. I just want to make sure that you are fully aware of what it is that you're doing and you're looking at, and kind of the tips to help you ask the questions that you may not have thought about.
So when you're renewing your FAFSA for your first one and you're doing a brand new FAFSA for your second one,
Right.
doesn't that reflect for the first one, don't they see that there's another sibling going
Yes.
into college?
Oh,
And so doesn't his financial aid get cut in half as well, or?
Well,
I mean, if they're in a public university.
yeah. For when you have 1 in college, say your EFC were 20, now you have 2, it's probably going to be close to 10. So the second one is going to do pretty well for financial aid. The older one may not see any change at all, because the schools aren't going through looking for students that they can give more money to. You're going to status quo. Unless you ask, hey, please, my student loves it here, they want to graduate from here, I've got 2, I've got 3 in college now, can you please give us some additional support? Some schools will be like, sorry. Others will be like, yeah, let's see what we can try to do. Could be small, could be generous. You don't know unless you ask. Now, for financial aid too, each year you're going to receive, or the student will receive, a renewal. And that's where you do the revisions. It'll be populated. Most of the fields will be populated. Income's going to change, so you change that. You're going to age a year, you change your age. And then anything that needs to be done, you kind of do, and then you resubmit. Check with the schools to see what their deadlines are for reapplying for financial aid, especially for institutional funds. The majority of the schools will have a deadline date to reapply. So check their websites, give them a call, ask them what it is for the returning students' deadline to apply for financial aid. You do not want to miss that free money. Questions? I know it was pretty quick, but I just want to make sure, and this is a good website, or a good list of websites that you can get additional information. And all of our colleges and universities, by law, are required to have the net price calculator. So you can go online to the different schools, put in some information, and it'll give you a rough idea of what your EFC would be. I'm not really a fan, especially for my West Coast kids. I don't want them to get discouraged, to think that, oh, I can't do it. I work with the students who want to go to help them as best I can. Questions?
I think you had a question over there. Did you have your hand up over there?
Oh, yeah, just anything extra for out-of-state, if you're applying to out-of-state?
Well, it's gonna depend if it's out-of-state public or private. Tuition for privates are the same whether they're students going in-state or out-of-state, but the publics could be a little bit different. So again, I suggest that you reach out, find out how they handle students for financial aid out-of-state.
If I could, can I chime in on that one? For a select group of schools, there's something called the Western Undergraduate Exchange. Has everyone heard of that? It's called WUI. It's kind of a funny name, so you won't forget that. So it's certainly not for every school, but it's a tuition discount program. So it's definitely worth looking up to see if the schools your student's interested in fall in that category, or maybe you want them to start looking at those schools in the category, because you could potentially go to those schools, they're out of state, but you're paying in-state tuition. So many of them will have criteria you have to meet, such as an academic threshold for testing or grade point average, or just the major that you choose. So some popular choices that we see students from Chaminade applying to are Northern Arizona University, Colorado State, Boise State, and those kids are getting a huge discount for going out of state. So definitely something to look into.
One other thing along that lines is that we've been doing some research on it as well. And we've also found that certain schools, just like what you had mentioned, want students from California, and so they'll give you a special scholarship. If you're, say, from the LA County, they will give you a scholarship. So there are actually schools like in Kentucky that will do that.
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm just saying.
No, that's very true, because they want to expand
They want
the
to
students
expand
that are
the
applying there.
Yeah, we want geographic diversity, we
Yeah.
want gender balance, we try to keep that as close to 50-50 as possible. Sometimes it's a little difficult. Yeah, so definitely, and that's why I'm not a fan of the net price calculator, because I don't want students from the West Coast to be discouraged. Like, oh, can't afford it. And that's the same thing when you're looking at your financial aid packages, or you're looking at a price tag of a college. Don't think because it is what the price that it's not going to be doable. You need to, again, meet with them, find out, do they need 100%, scholarships, grants, blah, blah, blah. Don't discount something because you think it's too expensive.
I had a good friend and her daughter went off to Minnesota, and initially the package that she got didn't make it affordable for them. And they called her to say why she hadn't accepted, because it was her first top choice, and et cetera, et cetera. And she said, I can't afford it. And they were able to, and I think this was in the spring, so I don't know, is there something to be said for after people send back their acceptances, that money is sitting there and that schools can say, well, we didn't get the students that we thought who needed the money, there's extra money in this pot, and now we can assign it? Does that happen?
Sometimes when it's the wait list, if a school does not get their enrollment by the May 1, or right around there, they may go to students who have not yet deposited, and to find out, hey, so are you still interested?
Mm-hmm.
But again, that's going to depend. It's different with every school.
And there can be some money available at that point for that.
Yeah, more than likely, probably a private, more so than a public. Publics usually are what it is what it is,
Mm-hmm.
where the publics have a little bit more flexibility to revise. Great questions. Well, thank you. If you have any questions, I'm here for a little bit. If you want my business card, if you have questions as you're filling it out, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm happy to help.
Thank you, Corinne. Thank you all.